A warm welcome to your Barbados Today Morning News for Monday, December 13. The National Union of Public Workers will be writing to the Ministry of Finance to voice its concerns about some provisions in the Debt Settlement Arrears Bill, which is set to be debated in the Senate this week. Over the weekend, the union held an emergency meeting with its members on the measures and issues related to pensions and gratuities. NUPW President Kimberly Agard was satisfied with the outcome of the meeting.
The leadership of NUPW deems the emergency meeting summoned last night to discuss the Debt Settlement Arrears 2021 Act as a successful and productive one. A long-serving member of the union who is well placed within the Ministry of Finance shared some valuable information and knowledge with the meeting participants, which led to discussions and robust debate on some of the areas within the legislation, which were the main causes for panic and concern with the public workers. Upon conclusion of that exchange, it was agreed that correspondence would be sent to the Ministry of Finance outlining the specific sections of the legislation that are troubling to the union. It is anticipated that it will be met with favorable action by the powers that be.
A universal basic income program can improve the welfare system. That's the view of Democratic Labour Party St. James South candidate Ronnie Yearwood, who is speaking at a webinar which examined a universal basic income as a new model of the social development hosted by the James Tudor Institute of Politics last evening. Yearwood said that implementing the policy could end the welfare programs as we know it entirely. Last week, Special Envoy to the Prime Minister of Barbados on Investment and Financial Services, Avinash Prasad, indicated that a universal basic income was on the cards.
We can shift our welfare system to a UBI because it would be able to kind of lead to a disbandment, if you like, a lot of the government kind of hotspot, sporadic forms of welfare. So something happens, often you hear the government, and it's not necessarily only this government, there's an announcement of a fund, a fund to tackle this, a fund to do this, a fund to do that. And when you look at the big pictures of welfare, that becomes really ineffective. Or then you have thousands and hundreds of charities trying to deliver the same form of welfare, whether it's a hamper, but in a hamper, you're choosing what the individual should eat, or you're trying to direct what they should do. But then the amount of effort to get a hamper when you could have actually given the person a basic income to make the choices themselves is not worth it. When you start adding it up and realizing all the varied energies and groups and times and monies that we spend to deliver welfare in Barbados, if we simplify the system and provide a basic income for what we may decide.
Senior Fellow at the Inter-American Dialogue, Rashid Griffith, who also participated in the webinar, said the universal basic income is an economic policy that can be accomplished, but he says that government would have to make it a priority.
Again, as we know, there are many other inefficiencies. So, we have, for example, like Barbados still has a film censorship board that's like $50,000 a year. We don't really need things like that. So if you just by having some simplification of different government accounts, and you can, and when I run the numbers, conservatively, you can get to about $500 million just by doing some accounting differences to put towards UBI. So it is not only is it doable, it's trivially doable, which makes it just a prioritization problem and not an economic problem. And I think when people realize there's a prioritization problem, not necessarily an economic problem, then I think it becomes a bit more palatable.
Noted Professor Justin Robinson, however, questioned whether a universal basic income could be successfully implemented in a small country like Barbados, given the current economic situation.
The second element, which Rashid dealt with to some extent, is the issue of affordability. How do we afford or finance this in middle-income countries like Barbados? I think the financing challenge is quite distinctive and different in a middle-income country. We have seen the multilateral system provide assistance to poor countries seeking to introduce some form of cash transfers. We may not qualify for that as a middle-income country. And then where we have had experiments in upper income countries, these are wealthy countries that have fiscal surpluses, they have windfalls from energy and other areas, they have hard currencies, so they don't have the same fiscal constraint that we have. So how we finance this in a middle income country, I think is something that we still very much need to address.
Now to the latest COVID-19 update. A 73-year-old woman is the latest person to die from the viral illness. She passed away at the Harrison's Point Isolation Facility on Saturday, and she was fully vaccinated. Barbados now has 252 COVID-19 related deaths. Meanwhile, the Barbados Santos Public Health Laboratory identified 74 new cases of COVID-19 from the 1,117 tests conducted on Saturday. Of the new cases, 9 persons were under the age of 18 and 65 were 18 years and older. There were 263 people in isolation facilities and 1,763 in home isolation. And under the National Vaccination Program for COVID-19, the total number of persons who are fully vaccinated is 139,823, which is 51.6% of the total population or 61.2% of the eligible population.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Hi, my name is Michelle Thompson. I'm a visually impaired person. I am also a member of the National United Society of the Blind of Barbados. I am vaccinated. I took the vaccination due to the fact that I am diabetic, I'm asthmatic, and I also have high blood pressure. I had no side effects. Everything went calm and smooth, as my doctor said it would go. Please, people, go ahead and do the right thing.
Let's roll up our sleeves and get back to living.
To regional news now, the Guyana Elections Commission GECOM elected former Deputy Chief Elections Officer Vishu Prasad to the position of Chief Elections Officer. Prasad had faced a challenge for the post from the former regional manager of the Electoral Office of Jamaica, Leslie Harrow. We get the details from News Source Guyana.
With the backing of the chairman of the Elections Commission, former GECOM Deputy Chief Election Officer Vishnu Prasad was selected today as the new Chief Election Officer of the Guyana Elections Commission. Prasad edged out Jamaican election official Leslie Harrow for the top GECOM job. GECOM Chairman retired Justice Claudette Singh cast the deciding vote at today's meeting of the Commission, handing the job to Prasad, who spent 17 years at the Commission in a number of positions. The opposition-nominated members of the Commission were against the hiring of Prasad, pointing to his lack of experience and insufficient qualification for the post. But he received the full backing of the government-nominated members of the Elections Commission and the chairman. In a statement defending her decision to vote for Prasad to be given the job, the GECOM chairman, Justice Claudette Singh, said the decision came after listening to the commissioners and reading the endorsement and recommendation for Prasad by former GECOM chairman Dr. Steve Suraj-Bali. The GECOM chair said Mr. Prasad has acquired institutional knowledge, having been employed with GECOM for 17 years.
On the international scene in Italy, 3 people were killed and 6 are missing after a gas explosion late on Saturday, which caused several residential buildings in the Sicily town of Ranvasua to collapse. More in this report from Reuters TV.
At least 3 people were killed, Italy's civil protection said, after several buildings collapsed late on Saturday following a gas explosion. 2 people, including an elderly woman, have been found alive in the rubble. 6 more are still missing. Priest Filippo Barbero was leading a church service when the blast happened.
We heard a loud bang, the doors flew open and the windows shattered. We didn't know what it was, so we interrupted the church service to help. When we arrived at the scene, we saw the flames. Apparently, 2 buildings collapsed because of a gas leak in a methane pipeline.
That's news, but for the very latest, you can visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media and bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. You can also hear us on Capital Media HD, 99.3 FM.